Hey, good morning, everyone. Thanks for joining us. This is the 28th edition of the Homes and Money Realtor Mastermind. We have been at this, back since the middle of October, and I just continue to run into and come across agents that would be fantastic guests. And met Jessica actually at one of the Real Producers get-togethers, and we started a conversation, a dialogue, and figured out that it would be great to have her on eventually, synced up schedules, and I'm excited to have you here today. So Jessica Mills with Comey, thank you for being here.
Hello.
Jessica, let's just kind of start with some of the basics. Have you grown up in Cincinnati and been here your whole life?
I have not. I was born in Colorado and raised in Michigan. Go Blue. And I've been in Ohio since 1988.
I apologize to everyone. We're going to have to end this call. I didn't realize that she was a fan of the team up north. And you can see my lamp behind me, so that's going to be a problem.
Yeah,
so.
very nice.
No, I'm kidding. So Jessica, so when you got to the area, when did you get started in real estate?
I got my license in 2004, and I was an engineer prior to that. So,
what prompted the switch from engineering to real estate?
everybody asks. I started investing in real estate in 1999 with my ex-husband, and we had a realtor who was also a retired engineer, and he passed away suddenly, and I tried to find his replacement and didn't really find anybody that fit my needs, so I got my license, and I became a full-time agent pretty quickly just from friends and family. So it wasn't my intention, but that's what happened.
Yeah, so 2004, you've been through some crazy cycles, just like a lot of us that have been in it that long have. Have you been a solo agent the whole time? And what about brokerages, et cetera?
I started with Sipsy Klein and was approached by Comey and Shepherd for several years, and I didn't want to be in the Montgomery office because it wasn't really near my core business, which is in Mason. So I just kept saying no, and then they approached me to open a Mason office, and I jumped at the chance. In 2011, I opened the satellite office in Mason, in downtown Mason. So that's how that happened.
Awesome. So I want to.
How many people? So for a while, it was just me and my assistant, and then I brought on a buyer's agent, and then brought on another agent, and then she moved to Kentucky. So it's been a little bit of a growing experience and pains, but right now it's just me. My assistant went back to full-time charity, and just kind of winging it at this point. I do need help, so I need to figure that
out. So I would assume that being a former engineer, and I guess you never really stopped as an engineer in your mind, but being a former engineer and then getting into real estate, I would assume that you have some very dialed in systems and approaches to the way that you do business. Is that correct?
That is very correct. I do have quite a little checklist going on that gets to everything. So I've been developing this checklist over, probably not at the beginning, but close, but at least 17 to 18 years. And I still add stuff to it today and change it around to, make sure that I don't miss anything. Or when you experience something that comes up in a closing that you don't want to have happen again, you just add it to the checklist. And even if it doesn't apply, you at least think about it before you go to the next thing.
Yeah. So just a really good business, concept that Jessica just mentioned is that anytime something comes up that we would identify as a problem, we have the opportunity to create a process that would prevent that from happening in the future. And so that's essentially what she's done. And I think that's a fantastic thing, whether you need it or not. It's kind of like when everybody was into auto replies and signatures within email. It's like you could ask the same question 3 or 4 times. You could have just an email signature designed or created that you could fire off, and it would generate that response. So that's a great business concept. Hopefully everybody on here's got that. But so what about the engineering brain or the engineering mindset with your clients? Is that something that you feel like is a strong benefit? Because, engineers understand how things work, right? And they understand how things are put together. And so when you are explaining the real estate process, I'm sure that you go through that with a realtor's heart and an engineer's mind. Is that kind of true?
I would say that's true. I mean, I think people kind of believe and trust what I say because I do know what I'm talking about. I mean, I got into business rehabbing property, so I can install a roof, I can do plumbing, I can do a lot of things. I don't do carpet, but I mean, I can do almost anything literally as far as putting a house back together. And so when I'm with buyers, I can, say, hey, we should look at this, or, this doesn't look right. I don't like this house, before we even get to the inspection phase. So they're not wasting their money on something that I should already know. So,
that's great.
And then from the seller side, you know what buyers are looking for being a listing agent. You know that they're going to call this out. They call it out every time. So let's fix this now. So,
and so you said that your need or kick, if you will, to get into real estate was because that you were an investor, and
right.
And there was a void that you needed to fill. So, I mean, I know a lot of investors, and I know a lot of people that are very intelligent would say, hey, this is something that I'm using, a service that I'm using, but if I did this myself, I could save X. Was that the mindset, or was it really like, look, I love flipping properties or rehabbing properties,
right.
or, having all these doors, and it's just something that I should just do full time? Was that kind of your thought process?
Well, when I started, we were buying and holding and renting, so I wasn't flipping anything. So I wasn't necessarily losing or saving any money if I went through somebody else. It was more of a matter of finding the right fit for kind of the engineer that I was, finding an agent that was structured enough and understood the process of investing in order to, help with those properties. I mean, there was no emotional tie to the properties. It's all about the bottom line and your return on investment. So I just didn't find anybody that I liked to work with. So I was like, and I'm one of those people that does things, I'm, independent, does things on my own. So I was like, I'll just get my license, get that, do that myself. And, the next thing you know, I'm a career change and freaked my mom out.
Yeah. So,
because I have a master's as well. So
very intelligent agent. That's, yeah. So have you then found in your real estate practice that you gravitate towards investor clients? I mean, I'm sure you help everybody, but
I do. I mean, I have some repeat offenders, I will call, as far as investors, and they do appreciate the fact that, I'm a fellow investor. I mean, I haven't bought anything in a while, but I have multiple properties that I own and manage. But most of my business is for sure just regular everyday sellers and buyers.
But I think you have a unique insight because you've bought so many properties and you've come from both sides of the spectrum, that you also, like you said, when you're walking a property with a potential client or with one of your buyers, you can point out things that would be easy fixes and things that they should stay away from as well. So I'm sure that,
right.
that's, a very strong, I guess, arrow in your quiver, so to speak.
Okay.
Okay. So you mentioned that you had this desire to put a storefront in Mason. And if you guys haven't seen it, it is smack dab in the middle of Mason, in the square there. And you've got window frontage. People drive by, they can't miss it.
Mm-hmm.
I think a lot of agents have thought about doing that. We talked to Brittany last week, and she did that. She said it was the constant sitting at a stoplight, looking over and saying, I should put an office there, right? You know,
I
so
have, yeah, I mean, I have the same stoplight, so it's a nice billboard for sure.
yeah. So that's a great that's a great tee up for me. Is it more of a billboard for advertising, or do you really feel like that the storefront gives you that much walk-in kind of traffic or branding?
So obviously I'm a numbers girl, so the walk-in traffic for my Mason office is really like only 2% or like, $65,000 total, so that's not, the money doesn't come from the walk-ins. However, over 25% of my business comes from marketing, and it's just a reassurance of my brand with my Kroger cards that are in Mason, the 1,000 people that I market to every month in Mason, and the downtown billboard, if you will, of the Mason office. So to them, I'm considered the Mason agent because of just the constant 18 years of saying, hey, I'm your agent, been mailing to the same people, they shop with me at Kroger, and then they drive by my office. So I used to go there every day. I don't go there every day right now, but I need to go back to that. But I've been so busy that by the time I get, finished here at the office at home, it's like noon, and it's like, well, I guess I'm just working from home today. But it is a good place. It's nice to have my own organization. I can bring my dog to work. He likes it there. He's got his own little spot. And it's just not, it is nice to have your own space, to be your own agent and have your own rules, if you will.
Yeah, it helps with the community feel. And I mean, if you've been around the city long enough to know what Mason came from to where it is now, I mean, yeah.
Mm-hmm.
So, I mean, to me, when I was a kid, Mason was a place that we drove through to get to the Lebanon YMCA, and now look at Mason, right? So,
right.
Yeah. So, talking about the advertising piece and being in numbers, that's a rabbit hole we haven't gone down. You mentioned Kroger carts. A lot of people have experience with that in the past. I mean, I can't go into the Beckett Ridge Kroger without seeing Kathy Kramer's face.
Right.
How do you feel like that has been a benefit to you, or is it just this blanketed community branding that you're about? And if so, what's the strategy behind that?
So I've been doing the Mason Kroger cart for, I would say, probably at least 15 years. I almost canceled it, and literally a Kroger employee bought a house for me, or I sold a Kroger employee's house. I was like, well, I just paid for it, so I'm not going to worry about it. It is just the reassurance of the branding of more of my core marketing is I farm, 5 specific neighborhoods, and I've been sending mailing to them since about 17 years. So if they live in those neighborhoods, they know who I am. People send me texts, I'm shopping with Jessica. It's just the kind of just a constant reminder that I'm out there. And, even when they shop, which they shop more than they get a postcard. So.
Yeah, and some of you know this that know me well, that I completely subscribe to this theory. I've got my face on scoreboards in 3 high schools. I mean, Miranda's on here today, and one day she was at one of her son's basketball games, and she's just like, "Oh my gosh, you're staring at me," So but it's this brand recognition that you are in the community, you care about the community, and that you hope that when somebody thinks about real estate, they think Jessica Mills, right? So
correct, yeah.
So then, it
is always fun to get the text with, "Hey, I'm shopping," or my kid sitting on your face, that kind of. It's just fun to see that as well.
Yep. And so then, what is the strategy behind that with your technical term geofarming, like with your postcards and your mailers and et cetera? Do you have a strategy for how many times you're going to hit those people and who you're going to mail to, neighborhoods, et cetera?
So like I've been mailing the same 1,000 people to the 5 different neighborhoods that I geofarm to, and they are basically the closest neighborhoods to me. So my core business is literally this neighborhood, the next neighborhood over, the one across the street. So literally 4 of them I can actually walk to. So the other 2 I used to live in, and 1 I just grabbed because I needed, to grow it a little bit bigger. But I'm typically the top listing agent in those neighborhoods because of the marketing.
Have you
Because it's been
considered,
consistent.
yeah,
Consistent, that's the thing. Yeah.
consistency? So have you considered branching into neighboring communities and like borderline, because sometimes people will move across, like from Mason to a neighborhood that's being developed next to Mason, right off the lines, etc. Have you considered any of that?
Honestly, I have not. I basically have just been with the rule of consistency that you have to be the one when they decide to move, that's the piece of mail they get that month. So it's literally the same 1,000 addresses for 17 years. So it works. I mean, people say, well, direct mail marketing doesn't work. Well, my numbers tell you it does.
Yeah, it does.
But it's consistent.
Yep.
I've been doing it for a long time. I mean, if I did it 5 times, it wouldn't be the same. But I've been doing it for years and years and years, and at least they get at minimum 8 mailings a year from me, if not more.
Yeah. Okay. So the concept of community and the storefront, what about community engagement outside of the marketing piece? Are you doing a lot of stuff within the city of Mason for, parades and shows and stuff like that? Do you feel like that's a huge benefit?
I do some of those things some of the time. Usually my schedule on the weekends isn't necessarily allowed that. I'm, having a fun time then. But I am a member of the Mason Chamber. I was an ambassador for a couple of years as far as bringing in new folks into the Mason Chamber. I am a participant in the Mason Mile, where we're trying to get more of a downtown community feel in Mason, like Loveland has and Milford has, and so we're working on projects and things to make that happen. So I'm part of that.
Nice. I have kind of one more question, and then if anybody has something they want to ask Jessica. But Jessica, there's no question we have an inventory issue, and we've seen an uptick in interest rates. You've been through, just like I have, multiple different seasons in real estate in different markets. I think you would probably agree that this one is unique because we've kind of never had the 2 things at the same time. We've never had higher interest rates and low inventory at the same time. What are you kind of feeling like is going to happen, and what are you seeing here as we're approaching, or just past the middle of June?
Well, I mean, all my listings are all still selling above list and in multiple offers. The one I sold Saturday was 5 offers, and above list price. I don't see. I mean, I think it's going to even itself out naturally, as most things typically do. I think the media just needs to keep their mouth shut, and things will probably fix themselves off by themselves. But I still think the media puts fear into people, and so they're thinking they can't buy. But I know there's just as many showings, and buyer demand is there. People move because they have to. People move because they want to. They're not going to let interest rates change their lives. They're going to live their lives. Not everybody can do it, but the people that have structured their lives to do so will continue to do so.
Yeah, I think if you can tie those 2 things together with your concept of marketing and consistency, and the fact that your database is going to continue to live their lives. Miranda talked about this on her mastermind, is if you are there and top of mind when they're going through some type of event, that's going to lead them to a real estate position or decision, then that's where you'll benefit the most, because people have kids, and kids leave the house when they go to college or they get married, and so those are events that either cause a move up or a downsize, et cetera, and you just want to be present for those, for sure.
Right. I mean, most of my business does come from my experience, referrals, and then the third is marketing. So those are I pay attention to my database. I drop by with birthday presents and things like that. So I definitely keep my people as top of mind as I can, without being pushy. Yeah, I'm not a pushy person. It's more casual than, hey, you want to buy a house?
Yeah.
So.
I don't know if you saw this report or this, I get the Business Courier. I know some do, some don't. But there was a big section in last week's newspaper that they interviewed a bunch of agents in the city, a lot of them more, downtown Cincinnati type stuff and luxury market. But in March of 23, so just a couple of months ago, 38% of all of our transactions were cash transactions, which is insane. Yeah. So do you think that's just short-lived? Like people's, they had this cash from COVID that they saved up, and they're doing things now? Or do you think we're going to see an increase in cash buyers as we move forward, because the market's not really the best place to put your money?
Oh, no. So real estate is always going to be the best investment. It has been, it always will be. I mean, it's typically, I just read an article this morning that it's real estate gold is where people think that is a good investment. So I don't think real estate's going anywhere. Cash wise, I'm assuming that they sold a house quicker than they could find a house to buy. That's why they have cash.
Okay.
But obviously, I have a cash closing today that wasn't planning on closing today, but yeah, we and it's just from a sale of a house. So it wasn't necessarily they had just cash loaded up. There aren't a lot of people that have cash.
Yeah.
At least not in the typical markets anyway.
And I think what we'll see, and most of you are experienced on this call, I think what we're going to see is more of this quote delayed financing concept. Like, a lot of people don't want to have all their cash tied up in their house, but they may have it on the short term. And so they pay cash to win the offer, to get the bid. And then they use a Fannie or Freddie product called delayed financing, which basically then allows them to take out the loan within a short period of time after they've closed. So that way it's not considered a cash out transaction. It's more of a delayed financing. So, okay, who's got a question for Jessica? And by the way, you were featured in Real Producers just a couple of months ago. It was a good story.
Yeah.
So.
Yeah.
Hey, Jessica.
Yep.
How are you? It's Patrick.
Hi. Good. How are you?
Good. Question I've been asking a lot of real estate agents that have been in the market since before 2008. For somebody who's experienced the market then as they have now, what mental hurdles do you find yourself really competing with yourself now as opposed to 2008?
2008 was probably my worst year. And honestly, 2022 was right behind it, to be honest. Last year was definitely interesting after an amazing 2020 and an even better 2021. 22 was like, but then 23 went like this. It might have been a little mental on my side. I was exhausted after being by myself, after I lost my assistant in 2020 and 21. I think it was more of a mental, like, I'm going to take a break. I've got some money, but it's not the best thing I ever did. It's a matter, just like, have a budget, save, at least always have 6 months of expenses. Because in this business, it's very cyclical. Got to enjoy what you do. Otherwise, it is a job. And sometimes this job is emotionally draining because of people.
Yeah, I totally get that. And then
people.
I mean, if you were looking at it at 2008, I mean, most people agree that 2008 still was the hardest time in real estate.
It was, yeah.
Okay. Just curious
Yeah.
about that.
I
Thank
mean,
you.
as far as my numbers, I can show you my spreadsheet of course, I've got spreadsheets for everything. But yes, 2008 was my least favorite year. I mean, I did well. I mean, I did well than most people, but it wasn't my typical numbers. I mean, last year wasn't my typical numbers, but for a typical agent, they would have loved to have had those numbers, but they weren't my numbers. So, yeah.
That's good. Good question, Patrick. Yeah, I wonder, Jessica, I wonder if some of the difference between 2008 and 2022, in 2008, it seemed like there were a lot more properties that were tied up because of the foreclosure process or the short sale process, et cetera. And it was just another hurdle to try to sell something, right? And then you add on that all the people that's credit was completely wrecked at the time, or they themselves were upside down in a house. It was just completely different. So
right, unemployment was high, foreclosure rate was high, obviously because of unemployment. I know that there are, like Little Miami schools, their levies kept failing, so their property values tanked, and then people couldn't sell their houses because they had to move. So Little Miami had a really hard time at that time. But the things that happened in 2008 aren't happening now, because people keep saying, "Oh, the market's going to crash." I'm like, no, I don't think it has nothing. Nothing is the same in the economy and things as 2008. So.
Any other questions for Jessica? Jessica, I want to say I really appreciate this. I gained a lot of insight from you today. We've talked about some of this stuff, small talk at, like we said, at a Real Producers event or another function, but just the fact that you have that engineering background and then the investor background, I think that's really significant in this market, and there's a lot that people can learn from that. So I appreciate you being on today. I appreciate it greatly.
Well, I appreciate the invite as well.
Yeah.
And it was nice it's obviously I finally got to watch the things. So it was nice to see a few before I came on to kind of see, what happened and things like that. So I will do my best to continue to tune in as well.
I appreciate it. So quick heads up, next week, we're going to have our first repeat guest. And I always get these kind of harebrained, ideas. So next week, Julia Wesselkamper is going to come back on. And, if you're in Cincinnati right now, you're aware that there's this home show going on that's been around for a long time called Homerama. I ran into somebody at La Rosa's the other night, and they were like, "Hey, you going to Homerama this year?" And so my thought is that we're going to spend some time talking to Julia next week about, look, a lot of people go through Homerama that don't have the means to buy those types of houses or those price points, but it's fun to do. And I'm just curious what that spurs on. And even to any agent, like, oh, I saw this in Homerama, and so I want to make sure that the next house I buy has this, right? Can't afford all of it, but I want to make sure they have this. So we're just going to talk some about that and check in on the luxury market and just check back in with Julia. She was our second guest, 27 episodes ago. So it'll be good to check back with her. So, yeah.
Very cool.
All right, everybody, I appreciate it. Thank you for jumping on, and we'll talk to you soon. Thank you.
Thank you.
Bye.
Bye. All right.